Hello, everybody. This is Young Penitent, and you are in my icon corner. I have with me today Father Moses McPherson, and we are going to be talking about lifting, and and also just physical, preparedness in general. So I'm going to add him to the stage. I would like to remind everyone to like the stream and subscribe to the channel because that's just what people do. And with that, I'll bring on Father Moses.
Hey.
Welcome to the stream.
Thank you for having me on, man.
Yeah, thank you. Let's first we'll get the introductions out of the way for people who do not know who you are. Just can you give us a brief introduction?
Sure. Father Moses. I'm a priest for Rocor in Texas. Been married 22 years, been a priest for 10, almost 11 years. And then I'm a father, have 5 sons. So, and then obviously compete in powerlifting and strongman. And we're just talking about powerlifting today. So
yeah,
I'm wearing my SC Irregular shirt. Shout out to Slade. They hooked me up with stuff. He's a good dude, and he's a catechumen in the Orthodox Church. Former Navy SEAL and great guy. So,
okay, what is that? What is that? Irregular?
Yeah, that's his company, SC Irregulars. Yeah. So he's
is it a clothing company?
Yeah, they do clothing and they do gun parts as well.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so they do both. He was what they call a tier 1 operator for the Navy SEALs. He's been a catechumen in Rocor, and so they send me some gear and some clothes and stuff, and so shout out to them.
Okay, where do they have a website where people can find those people, or?
Yeah, I think it's just SC Irregulars.
Okay.
Yeah, .com. Yep.
Okay. So I guess to get started, I want to find out about your background in lifting. How long have you been lifting? When did you get into it? How did you get started with powerlifting?
So like I started lifting when I was young, probably 14 was the first time, right around there. I grew up and I was bored a lot, so I did a lot of push-ups. I mean, it's like it may be part of the reason I'm so good at bench press is like I grew up just doing a lot of push-ups and a lot of sit-ups and stuff by myself. I mean, I can remember being young and just doing a set of 50 push-ups when I was probably 12 years old or 13. So I was always pretty good, like physically. And then 13, 14 in high school, bench pressing and stuff. I think I was, I want to say I was 14 or 15. And I remember I tried to bench press. I can't even remember what it was, 265 or something, weighing like 130 pounds. And I was like frustrated because I couldn't bench double body weight. Like I had no concept of like that I was actually even decently strong.
Right.
Like it was ridiculous. So anyways, like I think part of it too was like being a kid of the 90s, we just didn't play a bunch of video games. We didn't have cell phones. I mean, I didn't have my first cell phone until I was married. So, you did push-ups, you did whatever. I had another buddy that I used to work out with, my buddy Chad. We used to work out together, wrestle together. And like I didn't wrestle in high school, but just wrestling and stuff in general. And so during high school, as I've said in other interviews, I pretty much, wasted my time. I did ironically do high jump at one point. I have no idea why. I think I thought it was going to be the easiest thing to do. I was like, I was probably 5'4" or 5'5" at the time. I'm 5'6", so maybe I was even 5'6". I don't know. I actually did not bad at it, considering how tall I am. But after high school, and then as I became a Christian and like specifically was getting sober, that's when I started getting into rock climbing. So got really into rock climbing in my early 20s, kind of early to mid 20s. And then became Orthodox when I was 25. And within a year of becoming Orthodox, realized that I just still had a lot of issues with depression and with alcohol. And so I went completely sober for a period of 10, 12 years, something like that, of just everything. I mean, of just no alcohol, no nothing. And even historically didn't really have a problem per se with alcohol. It was more drugs, but I stopped everything in my mid-20s. And then at that point, I was like, I need some kind of positive outlet because I'm amped up all the time. I actually was like in a much worse state mentally when I got sober than I was when I was drinking, because, when you take away all that numbing agent, your true personality comes out. So I started lifting and got really into powerlifting, trained with some guys that were really good, talented dudes in kind of my mid-20s and whatnot. And I had known from rock climbing that, like, when it becomes an obsession, it takes away the joy, it takes away what's in, like, it's great as a hobby, but when it becomes too much, it just becomes a distraction. It's better when the sports are like, how do you want to put it, like an accent to life, they add some flavor, they're like a condiment,
Okay.
But when you try to make doing sports your whole deal, and this was 17 years ago, so this is like when powerlifting was really like kind of in its heyday with West Side Barbell and everything else. And I was like, oh, maybe I should move to Ohio and train at West Side and blah, 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 blah. And anyways, long story short is that I ended up blowing it all off and going to seminary. So I lifted all through seminary, came out of seminary, didn't lift for a bit, which I think was a bad decision. It actually was a really, I found it was a really mentally taxing time. Like, I just discovered that mentally I function better with having some kind of outlet for my personality, and
Sure.
helps keep me balanced. So anyways, did a couple of years of roofing where I was outside doing commercial roofing. So I was super physical during that point and crushing it. And then after I got out of that and got an office job, this was kind of my late 30s, I started packing on weight, man. I was like eating like a roofer, but I was sitting at a desk, and started getting fat real quick. And I was like ashamed. I was like, never been fat in my life, that wasn't intentional from powerlifting, And so immediately jumped back into doing jujitsu, started lifting weights. Somebody gave me some weights, so I had some weights in my basement and just started lifting again and just getting in that rhythm and that routine. And then, so anyways, so kind of, for the last 5 or 6 years, I would say I've been very consistent, kind of like, yeah. So
yeah, that's about with me too, because I'm also a power lifter. I've done a few meets. Right now at the present, I'm like having a layoff because my knee has been bugging me and I can't lift for the last couple of weeks. But I started getting, like, I lifted like in high school, for football. I had some actually decent lifting coaches in high school, football coaches that actually knew a little bit. But I didn't really start getting back into it until about same with you, about 5 or 6 years ago. So you brought up, okay, there's a lot that I want to get into. I want to ask though, do you think you could have you mentioned West Side Barbell, which for those who don't know, I think that's known as the strongest gym in the world, a powerlifting gym. They're in, like, where did you say they are?
We're in Ohio. They were in Ohio.
Right.
Yeah.
Would you have been able to even get, because I think you have to have like a 2,000 total to even like lift in that gym, isn't that? Would you have been able to like even join that gym?
Yeah, I mean, at the time, I think at the time I was weighing close to 220. And I was trying to do a 500-pound bench in single ply gear.
Okay.
So could I have been, and I wasn't taking any anabolics or anything, I was totally natural.
Right.
So do I think I had the potential? Yeah. I mean, I obviously have what would be considered an elite bench press, if nothing else. So if I had shown up there, even at that level, and done everything that they did and pushed myself, yeah. Do I think I have the genetic potential? Yeah. I mean, that's just like my deadlift isn't elite. It's solid, but it's not
Mhm.
elite. My squat is not elite. It's just with bench pressing, that's my jam, So
Okay.
yeah, I mean, I've benched at I think 218 body weight. I benched 451. So I mean, that was Masters division too. So
Hmm.
that's, I don't know, one of the federations, that's a Texas state record for that. So is that the best ever? No. Is it top kind of 1% of 1%? Yeah, probably. So yeah, it's good. I mean, that's just, yeah. I mean, I've pulled 650 and I've squatted 560. So yeah, Westside was all multiply. So let's say like in a perfect scenario, I would probably be close to a 1700 total raw. So
Okay.
do I think I could have broke 2000 with gear? Yeah, 100%. Like
Right.
with
Right.
powerlifting gear, I'm saying specifically. So yeah.
Huh. Interesting. Okay, so I want to focus in. This is like an kind of an Orthodox Christian centered channel. I mean, we also try to talk to other people here, but I want to talk about kind of a spiritual aspect of lifting. Some
Mhm.
people kind of think, oh, you're an Orthodox Christian, you should be kind of fasting and eating bread and water and withering your flesh down, and that lifting is kind of a vain. It's vain. Why do you need to be able to bench 500 pounds anyhow? Like, um, so from like a spiritual perspective, do you think that lifting is actually a healthy thing for the spiritual life?
Yeah, but I mean, there's no doubt about this. Like in terms of traditional Orthodox countries like Russia and Greece, they're normal. Married people are like normal people. In America, people become a convert to Orthodoxy and suddenly think that they're going to become a desert father or something. And so everything is out of whack. Like they're thinking that they should have this kind of crazy asceticism and do all these things that are unnatural. When you look at a country like Russia, it's like, who's one of the greatest fighters of all time in MMA, right? Fedor Emelianenko, like super devout Orthodox Christian, would go into the ring with his priest, was always wearing the cross, making the sign of the cross. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
What about even here in America? We have guys like Troy Polamalu, who was a very devout Orthodox Christian who played football full time and was a professional football player, right? And was out on the field making the sign of the cross. In normal Orthodox countries, you can be a normal Orthodox layman and you can do things that go along with that, such as like being physically fit so that you're able to protect and provide for your family. That's not a weird thing. Somehow in America, people have got it twisted because they want to be something that they're not. They want to be elite. They want to be, it's like it's like kind of like fantasy or role playing almost, or LARPing. So
Right.
people want to kind of LARP as monastics
Right.
in North America, and it's like, you're not a monastic. You can pray, you can have a very serious prayer life, you can be very ascetical, you can do all those things. It's blessed, but the way that people do it here, number one, is like very showy. So they're talking about it. I can't tell you how many times online somebody's posted that they're doing something ascetical or whatever else. It's just, it's not appropriate. And then number two is they're acting as though, a frail monk is the ideal for having a wife and children. And I'm not convinced that that's the case. I mean, when I had to work as a roofer, did I fast? Yeah, I fasted. I fasted a lot at the time, but I didn't do it. It wasn't showy. I just did what I needed to do, and I took care of myself physically, but I had to be physical because that's what I was doing. My asceticism was providing for my family, right? So there's kind of like this weird dichotomy in American culture where it's like, if you convert, you've got to try to emulate monastics.
Yeah.
And that's not healthy or normal. Like, we look
Right.
up to them, we have relationships with them. I just went to a monastery a week and a half ago. Like, sometimes I say stuff, people are like, oh, you don't love monks. you never read St. John Chrysostom on married couples? I'm like, listen, that's clearly not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, if you're called to be a monastic, go be a monastic. If you're a lay person, love your wife. Your primary duty is loving your wife, providing for your family, and raising your kids. That's your primary work.
Right.
While you do that, say the Jesus prayer as much as you can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But your job is not to say the Jesus prayer. Your job is not to be obedient to some elder. That's
right.
not your job. That's not your calling. That's not the podvig. The podvig is to have a wife and children,
right.
and to have that asceticism that is innate to doing that task.
Yeah.
And I think that's where it gets twisted, where people are like, why would you work out? It's like, well, I work out because life is hard and stressful and difficult living in the world. When I go to a monastery, it's a very different vibe than what I encounter in normal everyday life. If I was in a monastery, you're right, I probably would do prostrations and stay physically fit that way. But I live in the world, and so what do? I cultivate what I have, and one of the things I have is a hobby of weightlifting. And that's what it is. It's just a hobby. But guys need this stuff in order to blow off steam, in order to get their head right, in order to spend time with other men. I mean, I've got 2 of my guys from the church that work out with me 3 days a week, so there's a fellowship, there's a brotherhood, all of these different things, right? And then, of course, like interacting with your wife, right? I mean, there's like, your wife respects you and treats you differently when you stay physically fit, when you look capable. I hear it even from women when their husbands are not physically fit, that they're like, I don't really think he can protect us. And that's a concern, because the husband is, not in shape, or doesn't, understand that concept of protecting the family, right? There's things that women are looking for from men, one of which is physical protection, and one of which is emotional stability. So in my experience, lifting weights is one of the best ways to cultivate emotional stability, because you get to work out your negative emotions, you get to have a good time, you have fun, you release endorphins, you look at yourself, you're happy with what you're doing. Like, people don't talk about that, but you get a guy who's in his 30s or 40s who's overweight, he doesn't feel good about himself. Right. He doesn't like the way that he looks. And so that energy comes out of him because it's an insecurity. It's a fear, I'm concerned about taking my shirt off, or, you know what I mean? Like taking the kids to the pool, or I just don't feel good like a man. It's like, well, yeah, because you're not thriving as a man when you're out of shape. Like, very clearly, God has created men to be more physical than women. This is innate to who we are as men, to varying degrees, depending on what our potential is. But yeah, I mean, the reality is that we don't feel right when we don't kind of look right and are able to kind of carry ourselves accordingly. So, yeah.
Yeah, when there's something about like going through that process of actually becoming strong, that it takes a couple years to actually, be strong. But once you are strong, you just have you have a certain amount of self-confidence,
Sure.
that you're not really afraid of people anymore. You spend it only takes you spend a couple of years in the gym, and you're going to be stronger than 90% of the people you encounter,
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
Well, it's the same thing with guys, like when they roll jujitsu or they box or whatever. You can get a guy who's like not that big, who is fantastic at jujitsu, and the guy has tons of confidence. And it's like, why? He's like, because look, if anything goes down, I know that I'm covered and I can defend myself. And people forget that turning the other cheek is applicable when you can defend yourself. That's humility. When like, I don't want to fight you. I don't want to engage with you. I don't want to hurt you. That's humility. When you're afraid to engage physically with another person because you're weak, it's just weakness. It's not humility, right? I mean, the concept is lost because you have nothing. You're incapable of really not turning the other cheek. So strength is born out of confidence. and born out of actual ability. And when you have that ability, you're able to carry yourself in a certain way. And like I said, you know, your kids look at you a certain way, your wife looks at you a certain way, other people who interact with you look at you a certain way. The biggest thing is like we don't use it as the world uses it, as a, you know, as a tyranny or to lord it over people or to be more powerful or for our ego. Like everything that we do should be about serving other people, right? So, and this is why I often talk about the fact that like just being physically fit and then doing projects at your church. You know, we built this huge cross at our church the other day, and it's like pretty much all my dudes are fit. You know, like pretty much almost every guy at my church lifts weights to some degree or another. Like I've got multiple guys. I don't know how many guys I have to count, but like I got a handful of guys at least that can deadlift over 400 pounds. So working on a project, doing that, digging the hole, mixing concrete, everybody's competent. Everybody can lend a hand. You know what I mean? It's not, there's not kind of somebody who's dragging behind or something like that. Yeah. So that and then of course, when you're in a brotherhood of men, that's part of what creates that brotherhood and that camaraderie, is that you guys are united with a single mission and focus that you're all contributing to. So yeah.
So let's see. Now I want to go into, you said you're lifting 3 days a week?
I lift 3 days a week. Yeah.
Okay. So if for the people who out there who are listening, let's say someone is not yet a weightlifter and they want to get into it. Okay. So what would you prescribe? What would be the best way, like a good lifting routine for a novice to start to get strong?
Yeah, like I recommend the same thing for everybody, which would be just to do bodybuilding. Like you've got to have a certain amount of muscle and like tendon and ligament strength in order to like you need a foundation to build on.
Okay.
Right. So I'm a power lifter. So you know, I don't, you know, and again, I don't know if it's true or not, but you know, there's that whole joke about being sub 200 pounds being victim weight. You know what I mean? So I don't like doing powerlifting. It's not about necessarily getting as big as you possibly can, but you definitely want to fill out your form. You want to maximize what your real estate is. And so the best way to do that, this is straight from Greg Panora from Westside Barbell, and this was Louis Simmons, is what he did with guys, which is he just said, just get bigger. So just lift weights, do a bunch of bodybuilding, eat a bunch of food, and just get bigger. You build that solid foundation of muscle and strength. And like I said, tendon and ligament strength and everything else. And you develop your form and your technique and everything else. Because when you start looking at becoming strong, it's a specialized niche. You know what I'm saying? Like if someone were to ask me what probably the best is, I'd probably say doing strongman. Now, I personally don't love strongman. Like it reminds me of going to work, and it's exhausting. It's really hard. It's way harder than doing powerlifting. But I enjoy powerlifting. Like I enjoy just the simplicity of squat, bench, deadlift. I love the simplicity of one rep. But as far as overall body mechanics and training your body to do a lot of different things and have mobility and some cardio and some strength, I think strongman's the best. But yeah, if someone were talking to me and said, hey, I'm 5'10", I'm 160 pounds, what would you do? I would say just focus on trying to put on 30 pounds of muscle plus. Try to get to 200 pounds.
Right.
And it may take you 2 years, but just lift, do a bunch of bodybuilding, you know, meaning rep ranges that are 8 to 12 reps or 8 to 15 reps. Do a lot of volume squatting, a lot of volume deadlifting. Just build your body up. Just get that mass and get that foundation on you. And besides the fact that just lifting like that and eating provokes an awesome reaction, you know, in terms of gaining weight. I mean, when I first started lifting weight, I'm 5'6". I I think I was 150 or 155 pounds when I first started. And in 7 months, I went from 155 to 190. And I put on 5 pounds every single month. So, and that was all natural. This is all natural. What was I doing? I was eating like 6,000 calories a day. I was just eating 6, 7 meals a day. I would eat all day. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, do a protein weight gainer shake, and then I would just lift weights 4 days a week.
Woke up and then, like, did you set an alarm or?
Yeah. I'd set an alarm at like 3 a.m.
Really?
and wake up and do like a 500 calorie shake.
Wow.
Yeah. It's just discipline. I mean, it's not, the hardest part about, like, when people talk about weight gaining and all of this other stuff, the hardest thing, hands down, is eating. It's maintaining the diet. That's the hardest thing. The training is all fun.
Right.
It's mostly enjoyable. I think when you get higher in powerlifting, like I would say I'm maybe getting closer to what my genetic potential is, like in terms of, I don't know how much more I'm going to be able to eke out. Part of that is my age and other things. But the reality is that, yeah, I mean, the training at this level is different. Sometimes it's not as much fun. I think one of the funnest things is just going to the gym and just competing against your buddy. I mean, if you get one workout partner that you can compete against and you both are weak, it doesn't matter if you're weak. Like, if you guys just do stupid exercises and see who can get the most reps and do a bunch of stuff to failure and push each other and everything else and just go ham and have a good time, dude, you'll create memories. You'll have a blast. So I have a good friend, my buddy Manuel. When I was 26, I started like lifting weights for real. Manny, he was a guy that I worked with, and I'm like, hey, dude, I'm going to get a gym membership. Discipline has never really been like, that's a kind of maybe a character quirk of mine or whatever that comes a little more easy for me.
Yeah.
I'm like, I am going to work out 4 days a week. Mm-hmm. And he's like, all right, I'll get a membership. I'll work out with you. So, dude, we worked out all the time. I have so many good memories of working out with him, and just the funny stuff that happens at the gym, or people, doing stuff, or people talking trash, or watching people do idiotic exercise. I mean, just spending some time with a friend, and like, we're still super close friends. He's like one of my closest friends. And, but it all was just hanging out at the gym, just having fun. So the main thing is, yeah, you just got to put on size and you got to eat. Sure. And like I said, even when I put on 30, 35 pounds, like, I didn't even put on that much fat. It just got to the point where I was working a very physical job at the time, and I just started to just putter out in terms of just being able to put on more size. But yeah, I mean, the reality is like, 5'6", I was 5'6", 190. You know what I mean? Which is like a decent size for somebody who's only been lifting weights for 6-7 months. Now, obviously, I'm a genetic outlier. Like, there is that aspect of it, but I never meet anybody who does the sort of stuff that I've done either. Like, that's the other thing, where people are like, oh, I can't eat. I don't know what that means. Or when they're like, oh, I don't know how to gain weight. It's always the same stuff. It's like, you have to eat food.
Right.
That's it. Like, there's no secret recipe. You just have to eat food. If you eat food, it doesn't matter if it's vegan. It doesn't matter if it's not vegan. If you eat food, you will put on weight. You have to be in a calorie surplus. I mean, it's not brain surgery. I mean, like, this is like the easy stuff of weightlifting. Now, when you get into actually getting strong and how to increase your strength and how to make gains and how to get out of stagnation, bro, that's the science. That's where it really gets tricky, in my opinion. That's where you need somebody at various stages, to be a coach or to help you out or whatever else. And that's a different science. But just building a foundation, just have fun and push yourself.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting that you said just do bodybuilding. I think, like, if you're a novice, just about anything is going to work, and you're going to get gains no matter what you're doing. But for me, I remember, like, when I was in college, that would only get me like so far. And like, I would gain 10, 15 pounds, then it would I wasn't getting stronger, but I didn't have like you said, the nutrition, the getting doses of protein, 4 or 5 times a day, you kind of have to discipline yourself for that. And well, let's talk a little bit more about nutrition while we're here. You did mention like the vegan diet or the regular diet. So in the Orthodox Church, we have a fasting calendar that we're all following, and we're eating basically a vegan diet about half the days of the year.
Right.
So when you're weightlifting, you kind of have to have 100, 200 grams of protein a day. So what are you, or maybe even more depending on who you are. So what do you recommend? How do you get through a fast? You're showing?
So I take a lot of this is Old School Labs. Old School Labs is, I don't know, one of the bigger supplement companies. You can actually use a code Priest Moses, one word, Priest Moses, and get 15% off. They make killer vegan protein. I think some of the best. This is Vintage Bounty chocolate caramel. It's decent. I mean, there's two different things you got to look at. One is you've got to look at bioavailability, meaning the way that the amount of the protein that you can actually like convert, digest, use, whatever else. It is obviously higher for whey protein and other sources, right? But it's fine. Vegan protein is fine. I mean, number one is like, I don't meet anybody else who's Orthodox who lifts as much as me. So when people say like, oh, well, I'm just not getting enough protein, it's like, we're not even in the same stratosphere in terms of strength. So don't say like, you can't do it. You can do it. You just don't want to do it. There's a difference. You certainly can do it. It's not the end of the world. Now, in terms of vegan protein, yeah, I mean, I'll have at least maybe 100 to 150 grams of vegan protein powder shakes every day when I'm fasting. And then I probably get another 50 to 75 grams of protein from what I'm actually eating, So this morning I had a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. I don't know what the protein profile was. Probably 15 grams of protein or something like that. And then I think I had either 2 or 2.5 scoops of this. So there's probably maybe another 50 grams of protein. So maybe 65 grams of protein for breakfast. And then, I'm going to eat again. I ate some carbs at 1. I'll eat again at 3. And then I'll probably eat something at 5. I'm eating a little bit heavier today just because I'm deadlifting heavy tonight. And so I just want to make sure that I'm like carbed up pretty good. But yeah, I mean, it's at the end of the day, like you won't notice eating vegan for a day. I mean, I always lift weights on Wednesdays and Fridays. I lift weights Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So I always lift on basically the 2 fasting days of the week. I don't notice any difference. I guarantee your body does not notice 1 day of vegan versus 1 day of animal products. It's not possible. What do I notice during Great Lent? Well, during Great Lent, when I'm probably 3 weeks into Great Lent, I notice that I start to fatigue and I start to go a little bit downhill. Now, how much? Maybe 10% strength. I mean, I'm, you know what I mean? It's not like it may not even be that much. It may only be 7% or so. Now, for me, if I lose 10% strength, that could mean I'm going from a 450 bench to a 400 bench, right? But for a guy who benches 200 pounds and he loses 10% strength, it means he's benching 180. It's like, what does it matter? It doesn't even matter. It's a negligible amount. So would I compete in a powerlifting competition during Great Lent? No. Did I do a strongman competition last year during Great Lent? I did because it was scheduled. It was a local one. And I'm not saying this to come across any way, but like I won every event. So whatever. It's just like, it doesn't kill you. The big thing that I would say the difference is I think you got to focus on doing more volume during the fasting periods. So I think rather than looking at the fasting periods as being a deficit or a detriment, I would look at the fasting periods as being more like body recomposition time or more like bodybuilding time, more volume work. And also like it's a period where you're supposed to be focusing on prayer. So yeah, you may not be your best. That's okay. It's not a big deal. I mean, none of us are making money off of this. None of us are getting paid for this. Like
Right.
we're all pouring money into this because it's a fun hobby and that's it. And so it shouldn't take up more of our life or more of our influence or more of our interest than than doing actual real spiritual work, right? Real spiritual work should be where we're focusing all our time and attention, and everything else should be secondary to that.
Right.
So, yeah. And then with that, I would say like one of the things I was thinking about was because this is often a misnomer that, and I remember hearing this from, I think it was Dave Tate from Elite FTS was saying, people often think that when guys get on anabolics, they can do more work. Because they're taking steroids, right? So they can do more work. And he says it's the opposite. He's like, when guys are taking anabolics, they actually can do less, but the less that they're doing it at a higher level, right? Because they're getting more muscle contraction, they're activating more muscle fibers, right? So they're performing higher, but they can do less. So that's why when I think it's a fasting period, I'm like, do more, because you're not recruiting as much muscle fiber. You're not as tip top as you once were. That's okay. So just do more volume. Make it a time where you do volume. Try to blow your arms out. You know what I mean? Do something you enjoy doing and have fun.
Interesting.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of get, it's kind of a grind when you're doing like sets of 3 to 5 all the time. Maybe it is good to, schedule in a little bit of a rest from all that heavy,
Well, I mean, I think it's just like anything is, it's kind of like, people don't realize, like, you take somebody like a Michael Phelps or a Usain Bolt, these guys could not put up top times any day, right? They would go through long training cycles that would peak. They would go through micro cycles that would lead to bigger macro cycles so that when they hit the Olympics, they would be peaking. And ideally, they're only peaking for like one day, right? That's right. Because if they have a better time in practice, then something is wrong. Something is off. Everything should be geared towards peaking in competition. But it's not like Usain Bolt was throwing down record times every time he went to the track. That's not realistic. The body doesn't, you can't run the body at 100% all the time. It doesn't work like that. Right. At least at an elite level, it doesn't work like that. So what I would say is, go with the natural flow in the cycle of the year according to the church and do something that's productive and be like, hey, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. I remember years ago, man, when I was rock climbing, I was bouldering a lot. All right. So I just bouldered, which is really short, powerful, intense moves. It's like powerlifting kind of for rock climbing. Okay. And I remember I went to school in Canada, my wife and I did, and I joined a climbing gym up there. And then one of the women who trained there was like, you'll get a lot stronger if you climb these long routes. And so there was a winter where I had never done a bunch of routes, and I started doing all these routes, and I was trying to campus them, meaning doing like, 20, 30 moves in a time with no legs and stuff, and getting these massive pumps and everything else, and doing all this endurance work. And then the spring came and I went out to the boulders and I was stronger than I'd ever been. And it was like, what was it? It was like, I just worked on a bunch of aspects that were just weaknesses for me. And so by bringing up the weaknesses, my overall strength got stronger. Okay. So even just in that, like in terms of just, if you don't find yourself being a powerhouse in terms of doing reps or wanting to do reps, you will get stronger. You will get better from doing it. And you don't have to do, when you're doing a lot of big rep bodybuilding stuff, I mean, you're not going to be squatting, like right now, I mean, I work up to 1, maybe 2 really heavy working sets of squats. But when I first started, I would do 5 sets of 10 on squats, and just murder the legs, blow it out. And I mean, I have like gnarly stretch marks on my legs from this because I had skinny legs. And but there's something to that. Like you get a lot of muscle fiber activation from doing that. And yeah, you build up endurance and other aspects too. So yeah.
I'm going to bring up a question from the chat. How can we balance not being gluttonous in fasting periods with bodybuilding. I mean, is it necessarily gluttony if you're eating a lot while you're training hard? Or
Yeah, there's a great quote, man. You'll love this, and you'll always keep this. It's from St. John of the Ladder in the book, The Ladder of Divine Ascent. And he says, one brother eats an ounce of bread and is gluttonous. Another brother eats a loaf of bread and is chaste, or something like that. So it's not with how much you eat, right? It's how you eat according to your lifestyle. So for me, I could sit down tomorrow and eat 2,000 calorie meals or 3,000 calorie meals and still end up hungry. Why? Because I have so much muscle that my body is supporting. Is that gluttony? No, that's not gluttony. That's like maintenance, right? Whereas somebody else could sit down and eat 2,000 calories and be stuffed and eating way more than they really needed to. Why? Because they're not doing anything, right? So our measure on fasting or gluttony has to do with how much do you actually need to eat. So if you're sitting there eating, it's funny because if you talk to bigger guys, a lot of times they're the guys who like actually want to eat less because they like get tired of eating. They get sick of it. You know what I mean? It's like, it's not, like I tell people, like even on fast days, like the biggest part about fasting is just it's boring. It's like boring food. It's not interesting. Like eating whatever 600, 700, 800 calories of like protein shake and whatever else is like, that's not a good time. Like that's just not. So I guess I don't think a lot about it just because I'm not, gluttony is related to being fat and out of shape and overweight, right? So you could have somebody who's out of shape who eats 2,000 calories a day and is in a caloric surplus, who's putting on fat every day. Are they being gluttonous? Yeah, they are. Why? Because they're eating more than they need to. It's not about how much you eat. It's about what you actually need to support what you have. So that's where I would say it's more of a technical explanation than just kind of whatever, like a blanket statement.
do you go through periods of like a quote unquote bulking or cutting? Because I have never done that in my life, honestly. Is that even a healthy thing to do? Like maybe I talked to bodybuilders and they like, it was like you were saying, they need to give their digestion a rest for a few weeks or whatever sometimes because they're just tired of eating so much.
Yeah, I mean, is bulk? What's the question?
Like a bulk versus a cut, where like periods where you're eating surplus versus eating caloric deficit, which is more of a bodybuilder thing.
Yeah. I mean, I don't do it because I don't compete in bodybuilding, and I'm not going for that. I mean, I fluctuate. I'm 5'6", and I fluctuate from probably 225 to 232 pounds throughout the year. Sometimes I get down to as low as 220, depending on what's going on. But I basically have a 10-pound range that I basically exist in. So, I mean, there's nothing. I mean, again, I don't think that there's anything wrong with bulking if you're trying to reach a goal. You know what I mean? If somebody's like, I'm 150 pounds and 5'8", I'm going to bulk. It's like, well, you're not really bulking. You're just probably putting on the weight you probably should have already. Right. Right. You're just eating more normally, that's all. Okay. Yeah.
And so talking about bodybuilding, I do have this question, which might come up. This is probably a common question. Is bodybuilding itself, some people will criticize it as being an exercise in vanity. I personally don't criticize bodybuilders for that. Maybe the other way you could look at it is you're making yourself beautiful and you're glorifying God. What do you think about bodybuilding as a practice?
It's not really my thing. I mean, to be honest, like I just think it's very I don't know. I guess I would say just very close to vanity.
Yeah.
I don't know how else to put it. Like I don't have it. Like I train in my home gym. I don't have any mirrors. And so a couple weeks ago, I was like, I just need to get out of the house. It's my day off. I'm like, I need to get out of the house. I'm going to go to the YMCA and I'm going to train arms and I'm going to go to their sauna. Because they have a nice sauna there. And I'm going to pay the day pass, and go do that. But I found myself doing biceps and looking in the mirror and I'm like, this is really weird. Like, this is weird. Like, I haven't done this in so long that there's something like uncomfortable about it. I think it's very narcissistic, just to spend that much time looking at yourself. I mean,
Right.
you know what I'm saying? It's not like I don't look at my physique, every day to some degree, right? And say, oh, okay, I look, whatever. But we're talking about for 10 or 15 seconds when you're getting dressed or whatever else, or going to get in the shower or you get out of the shower and you take a look and you're like, oh, okay, that's how I'm looking right now. But yeah, it's a weird thing. I'm not totally sure it's just heavy on the vanity side. That's what I think it is. And it's really like it's all about you. It's all about yourself. I mean, I respect it for what it is. I mean, if you show me a picture of what's his name? Who is the British guy? The guy from Blood and Guts.
Oh, right.
Why am I drawing a blank on his name? Oh, now I got
Dorian Yates.
Dorian Yates, dude. You show me a Dorian Yates physique, it's a solid physique. You know what I mean?
Right.
He had a very impressive physique. But yeah, I think the other thing is too, which is a lot of guys don't understand this, which is like women, I don't train for other women to look at me, right? Like I have a wife, so I'm not going around taking my shirt off and doing that. And there is something weird about that because then you're kind of like tempting people, right? Or you're tempting women. And there's something off about that. Then furthermore, like, I think a lot of guys think that this is where I think it gets weird, where a lot of guys think women want like dudes that are shredded and six pack. Women really don't like this look, like they don't. If you talk to women I mean, there's like, I don't know if you ever see those ones where they interview people on the street and they say, okay, which body fat percentage do you like? It's like women don't like 10% body fat or sub 10%. I think part of it has to do with the fact that there's two reasons, I think. Number one is guys, when they get really low body fat, it kills their testosterone, right? Like their testosterone is completely bombed out. It's one of the ways that you can see if somebody's natural is like when they're coming into a competition, their testosterone levels will be completely bombed out. They will not have any good testosterone. And then number two is I think it's because it triggers a sense in women like that they're like starving and that they're hungry. So it's funny, like there was a guy, he was like, and I was friendly with him, and he was like, Father, you need to lean out a bit or whatever. And he sent me a picture of Arnold, one of Arnold's like classic photos, whatever. And so I sent him a picture of, I don't know if you've ever seen it, but it's the West Side Barbell Crew back in the day. And every dude has his shirt off, and every dude is just like, there's not an ab. Maybe one guy has like a couple abs, and everybody else is just big and thick, big traps and everything else, And I'm like, this is what a man looks like. So I show it to my wife. I show her the picture of Arnold. Now, my wife doesn't know anything about bodybuilding or any of this. She's like, that's just weird looking. And then I go, what about these guys? I show her the West Side Barbell guys. She's like, that's how a man is supposed to look. And I was like, and then the other thing is too, is like, if you think about it, I'm not joking. I really think this is true. If you look at a baby, a lot of times a baby kind of looks like a power lifter. Like they've just got like, everything is thick. They've got big, thick shoulders. They're like no neck. They're all just chunky and just, right? But they don't look fat. Like they don't look, see, a lot of guys look skinny fat where they don't have any pecs and then they just have a belly and they have skinny arms.
Right.
If you look at a baby, this is not a joke. This is like a completely we're like way off in the weeds, okay? Of like, this is Father Moses's personal hypothesis, okay? But when you look at a baby looks like a strong man, or they look like a power lifter because their arms are like huge proportionally, right? And they've got like these tight joints, and then they've got like huge, like ridiculous forearms. Everything is all swolled out. And I honestly think women see a baby, and that's like when they get a fat, chunky, like ready to explode baby, that's like the peak of like cuteness and just beauty, you know, in the eyes of a woman. And I was joking with my wife about this. I was like, I was saying, like, this is why you find the physique, like the powerlifting physique, more, because it looks like a baby. And she's like, oh yeah, that's probably it. You know, like it's like because it looks like a swollen baby. That's how you look when you're a powerlifter. But anyways, but for a woman, that's like peak health, right? When she has like a fat baby that's ready to explode, she's like, this is the most beautiful thing that I could ever create or have and love. You know what I mean? So
women will light up when they see a baby. I'll tell you that.
They want, the thing is, they want, like, I think the thing is that they want with men is like, they want somebody who's not, and I do think women pick up on this, which is when guys are super into getting ripped and lean and six pack and all that, women know intuitively that there's a narcissistic element there. They know that they're into themselves. And for women, that's a turnoff. You know, women don't want a dude who's like into himself. They want the guy to be into them, right? They're not interested in like, why are you so into yourself? That's weird, right? And then I think on top of it, yeah, when they see a guy who's like thick and muscular and doesn't look like he needs to be fed, I think there's something that honestly like makes them happy about that.
Interesting. And you know, actually a 10% body fat isn't actually a healthy thing. More of a healthy body fat percentage would be 16%. But you know, it does take a lot of discipline for that, and I can't knock the discipline for that those guys have. But regarding discipline, what do you say to people who have trouble? I'm kind of like you. I'm kind of naturally disciplined. I never miss a workout. It comes easy to me. I've always been that my whole life. What would you say to a guy who has trouble going to the gym 3 times a week and just making his workouts?
Find a partner. You know, just find a partner. Just, you know, you got to have a partner you do it with, a ride or die homie that's like somebody that you're going to be disciplined with. They're going to be disciplined with you.
Yeah.
And then just commit to the days, you know, and just say, hey, we are here these days, rain or shine, whatever else. I mean, some people probably think it's crazy, but I let almost nothing get in the way of a workout for me. And the reason for that is because, like, how many people have you talked to? They're like, oh, I used to work out. And it's like, well, what happened? It's like, well, I got a cold, so I missed a week because I had a cold. And then the next week I was busy at work. And then one of the kids got sick. And then before you know it, I hadn't worked out for a month. And it's like, I can't do that. So if I'm sick, I just work out. Right. I mean, within reason. If I'm vomiting, not working out. If I got 103 fever, probably not working out. You know what I mean? If I've got a cold or don't feel good, probably going to work out. If I've got something going on, if, you know, and the thing is like, it is being disciplined is an inconvenience. Like it just is, because things in life pop up that are pressing and that are important. But the reality is like everything in life is a trade-off. So if you want to be disciplined, you're going to have to trade off with the inconveniences. Like that's just the reality. Like there's no two ways about it. You know what I'm saying?
Maybe people can find a workout partner who himself is disciplined, because I remember like in high school, I had a friend, he wasn't going to come in, but I was there and I basically got him to come in. So that would be a good way to.
Well, yeah. I mean, a cord of many strands is not broken easily. Right. So if you have two guys and it's Monday, if you have to go to the gym at 6 o'clock by yourself, it's going to be hard to motivate. If you're like, I'm meeting somebody there at 6 o'clock, you will go because you have a commitment to meet someone there. I think that's one. And then two, if you're able to live the luxurious life, I would say definitely building a home gym is like one of the best things that you can do. I love having a home gym. It's so much better. I don't have to deal with all the gym nonsense culture, whatever else, people, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, that actually brings up another question, because it's a problem for me. You go to the gym and the women are very scantily clad. They're all wearing tight fitting clothing, a lot of skin. I mean, it's kind of hard it's almost impossible not to see it, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I was blessed during seminary that they had a YMCA. So I went to a YMCA. Like that's like one of the best places you can go to, because they're not going to have all the best stuff. And it's going to be honestly like older people, older women, you know what I mean? there's less temptation. And then other than that, I mean, I think you invest in buying the gear and making a home gym.
Sure.
You know, if you can do it, that's definitely the best. And you don't have to have a lot of great stuff. I mean, I started out with maybe $500 worth of stuff. Maybe it was just a bench. It was a bench squat combo that was so cheap you wouldn't believe it. And then that same bar I just deadlifted with. So, and it wasn't even a great bar. And then incrementally, like I bought a power bar, and then I bought some better weights and sold my old weights. And then I bought, a squat rack. So I just ticky-tacked along over the years of just getting more stuff. And ultimately, like even a home gym is just a store of value. I mean, if I had to sell it all tomorrow, I probably would make more off of what I paid for it just selling it. So if somebody was like, oh, you have, I don't know, $3,000 or more worth of gym equipment, it's like, yeah, but it can be sitting in my bank account, or it can be sitting in my garage and I use it all the time.
Wow.
And I get way more out of it, right?
Yeah.
And then if I wanted to sell it all, I could sell it all and get all the money back. So there's no downside to that. But yes, there's a gym locally called House of Gains. And one of my buddies was like, man, we got to get a membership there. They got way better equipment. They got a monolift, all this stuff. And I was like, I'm like, I don't know. So I jammed over there one day after work. This was a while ago. This was like a year and a half ago or something. And I called him. I go, what is this? This is a house of iniquity, man. I was like, there's no way I'm getting a membership here. I'm like, there's just like, it's not happening. I made it like halfway through the gym tour and I was like, I don't, you know what I mean? It's like, and I feel it doubly so as a priest. And I'm like, this is just not the environment for me to be in.
Sure.
So, and the other thing is too, if you're into powerlifting and you can find other people that are into powerlifting, a lot of times you can find home gyms or underground gyms, you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
That other people are using and go into a powerlifting comp and meeting people from your area, or a strongman comp from your area, and like meeting people and seeing what they're doing and where they're training at locally. Sure. That's a good way too. But yeah, I mean, the only answer I have is like, say the Jesus prayer, avert your eyes. And ultimately I just don't recommend going there.
Wow. Yeah.
It's just a high level of temptation, right? Sure. So it's like, there's that saying in the Proverbs that says, can a man heat hot coals of fire into his lap and not expect to get burnt?
Right.
And it's speaking about lust, right? So it's like, when you go to that and there's such a concentration of people that are doing this, the temptation is like really high. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not like, I don't know, you went out to dinner and then there's like, maybe there's somebody there that's dressed immodestly. It's not a thing. I mean, when you're at a gym and people are just walking by in front of you and they're all over the place or whatever else and blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Like I think it's just opening a door of way too much temptation.
Interesting. Here's a question for you from the chat. Jordan says, what should I do when I am riddled with lifting injuries that are causing me struggle to walk and function in my daily life?
I mean, I have no idea. I mean, that's like, I don't know what he's doing. So like, number one is I'm like, what are you doing to cause all these injuries? That would probably be like the biggest thing.
He says lifting injuries, he says. So,
I mean, the reality is like everybody gets injuries. I mean, that just happens. That's part of life. It's part of lifting. But I mean, if they're keeping you from walking and functioning, I mean, either A, there's like something mechanically wrong, like structurally wrong, or you have terrible form. I mean, he may have terrible form, rounding his back, or putting too much pressure on his body in certain ways that are causing, overuse. Maybe they're overuse injuries where he's just training 5-6 days a week. I don't know. There's like a dozen different things that could happen. But I mean, our injuries are part of the game when it comes to powerlifting. Like that's just how it is. Like you're going to get injured. I tore my adductor this past year, probably a grade 2 tear. I had bruising underneath my skin. I probably gave myself what's called a sports hernia, where you tear the abdominal muscles. I partially tore a minor tear in my pec, diving out from underneath the squat. What else have I done? And I pulled my hamstring into my glute, caused a problem for probably 6-7 months. I mean, just that stuff happens. I mean,
yeah,
you have to work through it, and if you have a good coach, they'll help you battle through it and find solutions. But yeah, I mean, getting little tweaks and little injuries or soreness is normal. Having debilitating injuries is abnormal. There's something like, are you just, again, are you benching 90% plus for 3 weeks in a row? And then you're like, man, I have this incredible elbow pain, like you wouldn't believe, and I can't straighten my arm.
yeah.
Like, people would be surprised to know this, but like, I bench 451. I almost never bench over 400 pounds. It's like, why? Because it's not part of my training, right? Like, I do speed bench, I do variations on the bench. I did bench with bands recently, right? I went for a PR the other day doing some benching over 400 pounds, but like, they don't realize that, like, I'll do overhead press, I'll do weighted dips, like, you don't sit there. I mean, that's the problem, is there are people who, like, they go, oh, I bench 225 for 3 reps. So every time they go to the gym, they bench 225 for 3 reps. It's like, you'll never get stronger doing that. Like, you have to ramp up what you're doing. You have what's called block periodization for a reason. And because of that, you don't hit 225 for 3 reps every time you go to the gym. That you're basically training near failure every single time that you're there on a main compound lift, which is very hard on your joints.
Overtraining.
You know what I mean? Yeah, and again, you may not be overtrained, but you may exacerbate your tendons or your ligaments. Yeah, it's very hard. It's actually a lot harder to overtrain than people think.
Really?
That gets thrown. Yeah, it's way hard. It's super hard. It's super hard to overtrain. When I tore my adductor, I was overtrained. And I could feel it, but the level of exhaustion and fatigue that I was at was like really high.
Yeah.
Most of the time, most people are undertrained. They're not doing nearly enough volume. So,
Really?
yeah, I mean, it's just true. I mean, even my guys who train with me all the time, I mean, they're routinely throwing down 20,000 pounds of volume every time we work out, and they're not elite by any means. I mean, I think one of them went over 30,000 pounds total volume the other day, 30, maybe 40,000. I was at like 60,000. So, I mean, people way underestimate this. I mean, we do 3 workouts a week, and every workout is at least 2 hours, if not 2.5 to 3 hours. And yeah, a lot of times we're benching and squatting or benching and deadlifting. So I think that's most people are. Dave Tate said something along the lines of most people are underfed. Most people are overfed and undertrained.
Really?
That's what it is. Yeah, they try to eat too much. Trying to eat too much, and they lift too little. I mean, I could show you some of my workouts that we do, but yeah, I mean, it's quite a bit of volume.
Do you want me to add that? You want me to show something? I can bring it up.
I don't know if I have anything on. Maybe I have something on my my Instagram. I think I have a picture on my Instagram of a workout recently, or maybe it was Facebook. I can't remember, man. But it was one of those recently where I showed. Yeah, I think let me see if I scroll down if it's on there or not. I don't see it. It's probably in one of these posts. But anyways, I don't know. I just don't even know which one it's in. But yeah, I mean, here, I'll even pull it up on my phone just so you can even see it.
Oh, okay.
Here, hold on a second. So this was like a really easy workout the other day. Oh, let's see if you can you capture it or no? There we go. So this is like an easy workout the other day, which was just biceps and some tricep extensions, and that was almost 20,000 pounds.
10 rep. You did 10 sets. Is that including warm-ups, or is that you did 10 sets on bench?
Yeah.
That's a lot of volume. That's more than I ever do.
Yeah, that's including, I mean, that's warm-ups and everything, but yeah.
Oh, okay.
But I mean, here's one. This is 18,000 kilos, so probably 40,000 pounds. So this is like.
So how are you measuring? Okay,
So there's
squat.
like eight sets.
Sets of 8.
No, there's 8 sets of squats.
8 sets?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
And then on bench press, there was 7 sets, 2 sets to failure of dips, and then 3 sets of curls, and then 3 more sets of barbell 21s. Yeah.
That is way more than I'm okay. Yeah. So I'm kind of training myself. So I think I need to, maybe that's why I'm not making as much progress these days. I kind of been peaking. Of course, I was trying to do keto for the last 6 months, and that took a lot of.
Keto's terrible for weight training.
Yeah, you can't. I don't think you can do.
You cannot do powerlifting on keto.
Yeah, that's what I found out.
Yeah, I realized that like in 3 weeks. I was like, dude, I got abs. I'm looking great. And I was like, every workout, I was like 25 minutes in, and I'd be like, I have no energy. I'm like just totally bombed out.
Right. Yeah. I couldn't even finish my workouts. I had to go home, and I was like, that's it. I have to decide. I had to choose between powerlifting and keto, and I actually chose powerlifting. That's just.
Oh yeah, I mean that's a no-brainer.
No, I still want to give it a try though, but maybe while I'm injured with this knee thing, I can try it again. I don't know. So there is a question from the audience. He's asking, how do you measure total volume?
So total volume would be like, let's say I bench 225 for 10 reps. That would be 2,250 pounds, right?
Okay, gotcha.
So volume is just the amount that I lifted times how many reps. So you lift 10 pounds for 10 reps, it's 100 pounds of volume.
Okay.
So, yeah, I mean, a lot of these workouts are just over 20,000, 30,000. I did one the other day. Where was it? There was one I did the other day. But, yeah, I mean, here's probably a 2-hour plus workout that was 35,000 pounds, and it was 5 sets of deadlift, 2 sets of deficit deadlift, 3 sets of bent over one arm rows, and then 2 more sets of dumbbell rows. So, yeah, I mean, you're talking, yeah. Here's another one. 6 sets of squats, 6 sets of military strict press, 3 sets of reverse flies, wide grip rows, 5 curls sets, 2 dumbbell curl. Yeah, I mean,
I'm gonna have to up the volume of my workouts here.
yeah, you're probably not doing enough. I mean, that was the West Side Barbell was, man, they did massive amounts of volume.
Right.
You know, so yeah.
Oh, okay. So we had agreed to an hour conversation. We've gone over an hour. Can you tell us, I mean, do you have any last thoughts about this subject to share with people?
No, man. I mean, I got a little bit longer. If you want to do a little bit longer, I'm fine. If you have any more questions.
Well, I mean, if people in the chat have anything to ask, they can throw it in there. So is lifting orthodox?
I think it's just, you know, there was a saying from by Troy Polamalu, who said, he's like, I don't love football. And he's like, but football is part of life. And he's like, I love life. And he's like, therefore I love football. So like, I love that it's part of life. I think people are getting they're getting reductionistic. It's like, is it spiritual for me to go to vigil? Sure. Is it spiritual for me to go to work to support my family? Yes. You know what I mean? Like, is it spiritual for me to take the trash cans out at night so my wife doesn't have to? Yeah, that's spiritual. I think that people get into kind of a Platonic dualism where they go, oh, if it has to do with the body, then the body's lower than the soul, and we're only supposed to be doing things for our soul. So maybe you're not doing things for your soul if you're doing them for your body. It's not orthodoxy. You know, part of orthodoxy is about embracing life and living life and enjoying life. Somehow in the convert culture that we live in America, people seem to have missed out on that. Like, as if it's just all of life is supposed to be kind of like morose repentance and whatever else. And it's like, go to an Orthodox country. You know, it's hard to really understand orthodoxy if you've never been to an Orthodox country and seen how it is organically, because it's organic. It's not, people aren't doing orthodoxy. I think so often people are like, here in America, they're doing orthodoxy. Like somebody in the chat said, they said, young penitent, you look more like a priest than he does. And it's like, go to an Orthodox country. See how many priests have long beards. There's nothing wrong with it. But it's the idea that like the long beard is what is Orthodox. And the priest has to have the long beard or something. And it's like, it's just not reality. I mean, it's just one of the holiest people I ever met was a priest who had a mustache. It was clean shaven. And he was like, and he had real gifts of the Holy Spirit. Like he was a real grace-bearing priest, the real deal, not, oh, he's a priest, I like him, but like he has the Holy Spirit.
Right.
He had the grace, man. And it wasn't about the length of and he didn't have a ponytail. He had like a standard, I don't know, parted haircut and this just standard issue mustache.
I'm trying to remember the name of the priest from Montana when I went to the Orthodox Montanica conference.
Yeah. Father Russell.
Yeah.
There's a whole generation of priests that all had mustaches, and that was like the norm. Mm-hmm. And it has nothing to do. It's not like they're not pious because of it. That's what I'm saying is like there's a sense in America that orthodoxy has to be a little bit weird or a little bit edgy or a little bit monastic or a little bit, forgive me, but a little bit Father Seraphim Rose-ish, death to the world kind of thing. And it's like, no, that's part of it. Like, of course. I mean, I've spent massive amounts of time, and this is the thing, somebody would be like, oh, Father, I'm like, I've spent so much time at Platina. I mean, I spent so much time there that I pretty much had my own cell there. Okay. So like nobody can say, oh, Father Moses, he's not going to monasteries. Like, you just don't know what you're talking about. What I'm saying is there's a clear distinction between being a lay person and being a monastic. And the way that you receive grace as a lay person is not inferior to a monastic. It's just different. There's that quote from St. John Chrysostom where he talks about, the man who lives in something like harmony and peace with his wife and love and mutual submission, something like along these lines, is at the same spiritual level as the elder who lives in the desert as an ascetic. And people forget, like, who was St. Anthony's equal? Do you remember this from the Desert Fathers?
Yeah, the cobbler.
The cobbler. He's like some married dude. He's like a blue collar guy.
I don't think it said he was married necessarily in the life of the saint in the story. He could have been.
Let me put it this way: it would be very weird at that time if you had a celibate man working. Like pretty much everybody was married. I mean, that has been the norm since the beginning. I mean, of society, right? So we don't know that he was married. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he was single, but he was just. I mean, either way, he was just some blue collar guy. That's what he was. He was made holy by the disposition of his soul and the thoughts that he cultivated. It wasn't about living in the desert or being a cobbler. It was about the disposition of his soul, So we need to be mindful that like our life as husbands revolves around a lot of it revolves around our family and cultivating our life and our marriage with our wife, cultivating and raising our children, being a sacrificial leader for them, and you know, having a hobby, having some fitness, spending some other time with men in the church is just good and beneficial and healthy and normal. It's normal to do these things. The people I think that are going to be the ones who really burn out of orthodoxy are the people who are trying to push themselves beyond what they're physically able to do spiritually. They're just not at that level. But they want to parade that level, or they want to promote that level online. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah.
And never once as a priest, no matter how my prayer rule was as a priest, I never thought, oh, this is for everybody. You know, when my prayer rule, let's say when I had less kids, my prayer rule, when I had more time to cultivate prayer, I didn't think, oh, this is normal. Everybody should be doing this. It's not. It's not like that. You know, people are saved through their marriages. They're saved through their leadership, through their work, through what they're doing in the way that they lead and cultivate their family and the attitude by which they do it. You know, people forget that saying from St. Paisios where he says, the mother who stays up all night with her child who's sick with a good disposition receives the same grace from God as the monastic who's at the all-night vigil on Mount Athos. Because in God's eyes, it's the same. It's the asceticism. It's the sacrificial struggle that we do. It's not where we do it or how we do it. It's that we do it, and that we do it humbly, that we do it with good attitude, that we do with a lot of love and a lot of joy for other people, right? Nobody sits there at church, or no woman sits there and thinks, man, I wish my husband was less capable. You know, nobody sits there and says that. They're like, I wish my husband could get more accomplished or do more or take care of these things, or I wish he was setting a good physical example for the kids. I wish he was taking care of himself, getting his blood work done, and like was healthy, etc., etc. You know, that's how we are of service. So, and again, you know, the monk prays for the whole world. That's their job. And I can't remember who said it, but one of the monks said something like, I love all women at the exclusion of one woman. Right? And the married man loves one woman at the exclusion of all women.
Interesting.
Right? Like there's a distinction there that the monastic is doing that is not the same. They are praying and pouring out their energy and their effort for the whole world, whereas I am primarily pouring out my energy and my effort for my wife and for my children, and then secondarily for my church community. Right? Those are the people that I am struggling and sacrificing for and pouring my energy out.
So we were talking about some fasting nutrition earlier. Another question, he wants you to go a little further and ask for recipe and meal ideas. Can you touch on good fasting recipes or meals?
I'm terrible. I'm the worst person to ask. My wife is vegan. She's vegan all the time. She cooks whatever. I eat it. That's how it is.
What was the type of protein that was in the one that you showed earlier? Is it because I know pea and rice protein together are a good combination.
Yeah, this one is a pea, brown rice concentration, pumpkin seed, sunflower seed. I do a lot of beans. So like if I had to go to work or do whatever, I would go to work and eat, like I would get a can of beans. I'd rinse a can of beans because it's that film on the beans that gives you the gas. I would heat up some rice. I'd pour a can of beans on there. That's 35 grams of protein. And then maybe eat some nuts or whatever else with it, and just eat rice and beans and put barbecue sauce on it. I'm the worst person to talk to about cooking meals. Like I'm a savage. When it comes to food, it's like you put it in front of me, I just eat it. Yeah. I'm not interested in food prep. Like none of that stuff.
Yeah, I'm like a white rice with a can of tuna on top, or white rice and ground beef. That's like my meals.
I'm super simple like that. So The other thing is I always recommend getting a lot of vegan food from Trader Joe's or other places. They have a lot of those vegan like burritos, and they're just beans and rice and whatever else, but it's already just prepackaged. You can just microwave it. The Trader Joe's is like good quality. So again, I would eat that. And again, it's just for all the supplemental, calories and whatnot. The things I look at are like, I really need to know. I know I need to get 200 grams of protein minimum a day. But everything else I can backfill with rice and peanut butter and jelly and beans, or my wife makes some kind of, vegan casserole, whatever else, or some microwave. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just, yeah, the main thing is it gets boring after a couple of weeks of eating vegan. It's like, it's not exciting. Somebody asked in the chat if I'm vegan. I'm not vegan.
What about supplements? Do you recommend any supplementation?
Number one thing I recommend is creatine.
Mm-hmm.
I tell everyone if you're training, to do 10 grams of creatine a day. Creatine's naturally occurring, obviously, in animal products. You don't get it vegan wise. It helps to fill the muscle cells with water. Mm-hmm. It helps with water retention. So it helps with recovery and whatnot. There's only 2 supplements I recommend, which are creatine and caffeine. Those are the only things that I think you really get a good bang for your buck on. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Obviously,
creatine's good also it actually has benefits, cognitive benefits too.
Yeah. And most of this stuff I think a lot of these supplements, like if you take them, it's not like you notice a big difference.
Sure.
Like if you take a scoop of, I don't know, some kind of pre-workout, Total War or something else, like you feel it, like it's undeniable, right? Now, if somebody's like, what about BCAAs or this or that or whatever? There may be scientific literature, whatever else, but just in my experience, like I've seen with creatine that it can easily help you put on 5 pounds and get you, like, you'll feel better. You'll actually have better recovery and feel better from taking the creatine, especially during a fasting period. Yeah. So again, big on creatine. Yeah. Old School Labs, like I said, they sell creatine that's decent price. You can use Priest Moses, get 15% off. It's a good product. Anything other than that is just, to me, it's a waste of money. If you're in your late 30s, of course, I'm going to recommend doing your blood work and looking into getting TRT or something else, depending on where you're at. But that's not really supplement. You know what I mean? That's a kind of different category.
So here's a personal question. Do you think I'm 42. Do you think I can keep getting stronger yet? I mean, I kind of feel like I'm almost maxed out. It's just like, kind of plateauing. For how many more years do I have for getting stronger?
Well, how tall are you?
6 feet tall.
How much do you weigh?
200 at the moment.
I mean, put on 70 pounds of muscle and see what happens.
70? Yeah. I don't like being like, when I get past like 215, like it affects my breathing, like when I'm trying to sleep. I don't like being.
It's all part of the game, buddy.
I don't like being over 210. 212 is like.
I mean, at 200 pounds, it's hard at 6 foot to have, all powerlifting and all this is all leverages.
Right.
And how much muscle recruitment you can do for the leverages. So obviously you're at a deficit at 200 pounds and 6 foot tall.
Sure.
You know what I mean? How much longer could you get strong? Well, realistically, I would say at least into your mid 40s. There seems to be some anecdotal evidence that, guys can still be strong in their 40s. Strength is totally different than doing endurance. Endurance is a young man's game. There seems to be some correlation. Speed is a young man's game, but slow muscle contractions, which is powerlifting, there doesn't seem to be necessarily a full plateau on when that will happen. Biggest thing that I would recommend to anybody is like the best literally the best thing I can recommend to anyone is to get if you want to compete and you want to get better, get a coach. That's like the number one thing is get a coach. If you get a coach, like you're going to make significant progress.
I agree with that. So are you recommending, from John Anon, do you recommend a gram of protein per pound of body weight?
Yeah, when you're at your maintenance weight. So, when you're 150 pounds and you're trying to gain weight, eat double. Eat 300 grams a day. When you're 170 pounds and you need to gain weight, eat 300 plus grams of protein. There's no downside to it. As long as you're drinking enough water, there's absolutely zero downside to it. In fact, there's a lot of kind of quote unquote anecdotal evidence that it will still help with muscle synthesis or protein synthesis and like muscle building and whatnot. So yeah, go crazy on protein. There's no downside to it.
300. That's a task.
No, I mean, if you eat 6 times a day and you eat 50 grams per meal, that's simple. That's not even like hard. I mean, that's not even pushing it.
My stomach will be like tired at that. I mean, I can't even. My stomach doesn't work that well. I have compromised digestion.
Have you thought about getting into ice skating or something else? Just kidding.
Here's an interesting comment. Devin Murdoch says, this is everything that is wrong with Orthodox Christianity in the United States. I don't know what particularly this guy is talking about, but he apparently
I don't even know. What does that even mean?
I think he's talking about we should be morose monks eating bread and water and, only living in a cave is what he wants us to be doing. That's that's good too.
God bless him. I hope it works out for him and his wife. What are you supposed to say? I don't know if people even realize this. The strongest person in the world, literally like the probably strongest person in the world is Orthodox.
Oh, Thor?
No, Lasha Telegadze.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the Georgian the Georgian Olympic lifter, man.
Oh, right. He just broke like the what was it? The clean or the clean jerk or whatever.
Yeah,
broke the record.
He's bonkers strong, like unreal strong. But anyways, every time he goes up before he does a lift, he's always making the sign of the cross. He's very devout, has a wife, has several kids, very serious about his faith. Yeah, it's beautiful. I think that's what people don't see in this country, which is like they don't see that there are just like normal people who are Orthodox, who live a normal life, have kids, have a job, and are not pretending to, LARP as monastics, but are like serious about their faith, their love for Christ, and live a normal life.
Right. I liked what Brother Nathaniel was saying. He was saying they are cookie cutter Christians is what the term he was using. This guy, Ephesians 6:12 says getting protein during Orthodox fasting periods. We did address that already earlier. So coming up on an hour and a half here. Before we jet out, I want to give you an opportunity. Please tell us where we can find you online, where to follow you, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I post all my weightlifting on Instagram. It's just McPherson Barbell, my last name. So McPherson, McPherson Barbell on Instagram. And then I guess I'm on Facebook as just myself, Moses McPherson. And what am I on Twitter? I think on Twitter, I'm Father Moses TX for Texas.
Okay.
So that's it. Those are like the main things.
Last question, since you are a priest, I would like to ask you to leave us, please, with a word of advice, a word to live by.
Oh, word of advice. Just be normal. Be normal. Go to church, say your prayers, keep the fast, have normal, healthy relationships with people, be an asset, don't be a liability, be a member of your community that people can rely on, have character, like just be solid. I just was reading this last night from the book Holy Tradition with Dr. Harry Busalis wrote it. One of my professors wrote this. And he said, first and foremost, however, what the church seeks when they're looking for a priest is simply a man of the church, a bona fide church man, someone who obviously belongs to the church, someone who clearly knows the church, and someone who can confidently count on to actually represent the church, especially in our times of trouble and tragedy, sickness and pain. In a certain sense, the priest personifies or even incarnates the church, in as much as he represents God to his people and serves them in the image of Christ. This is why we call our priest Father. This is why we kiss their hand. The priest has been ordained and set apart for unique and holy mystery. You know, the priest kind of does this maybe par excellence, but think about that. What does the church look for? The church looks for a man of the church. So even if somebody isn't a priest or even going to become a priest, they can still be a man of the church. They can still have character. They can still help pull the weight. They can still contribute financially. They can be a pillar. They can be a stability for those around them and a good example. That's the number one thing I would say, is just be normal in the real sense of the word, to be a healthy Orthodox Christian made in the image of God and in the likeness of Christ, with the attitude that you came to serve, not to be served. So that would be it, man. 100%.
Good. Thank you for that, Father. This has been Young Penitent with Father Moses McPherson signing out. We'll catch you all next time.
God bless.